Welcome back. I hope you're having a fantastic day. It is February the 8th of 2022 and the markets have closed. Bitcoin is still jumping around trying to figure out which way it's going to go. So let's take a look and see what's going on. The cryptocurrency markets were a little bit down today in general, but they have bounced back here towards the end, just like the stock market. The stock market we'll take a look at in just a second, closed fairly strong. But this is CoinMarketCap. You can this is a free website that you can use to kind of look up what cryptocurrencies are doing on a daily basis or at any given time, tracks price action. You can look up by the category of DeFi, NFT, metaverse, things like that. So if you have a narrative you want to invest in, like DeFi or NFT or metaverse, for instance, you can look and see what tokens fall under the metaverse and see how they're doing. So you can kind of track the little areas of the market that you are wanting to watch and see what's going on. You can see the biggest gainers, the biggest losers, all types of things. So this is a handy website to look at if you want to track the overall prices of the cryptocurrency market and just kind of get a gauge of what's going on. Another one that's handy is Crypto Bubbles. I don't know if you've seen that, but let's take a look at Crypto Bubbles. And this one kind of gives you a real quick indication of what's going on, green or red, and it has the different tokens kind of floating around, and you can sort this by different ways. Like this is showing the top 100, but we can go in and look at the top 200, 300, top 1,000. You can look at the different exchanges, Binance, Coinbase, FTX, and kind of look at the tokens that are there. You can look in different currencies. So this is kind of a neat website, Crypto Bubbles, to kind of look at what's going on and just get a quick view of the market in terms of the activity, whether we're up or down, what's green, what's red. Big story today, the Fed seized $3.6 billion in Bitcoin stolen from Bitfinex back in 2016. They've also arrested a couple in New York that was planning to help launder the money. So the Justice Department wanted to send a message that we can and will track people down trying to do illegal transactions with cryptocurrency. So this is a good thing. This brings comfort to the market and to investors that they can and will be protected. And some of this activity like this can be stopped and can be tracked down and eliminated. So let's take a look at Bitcoin itself. This is the hourly chart. Bitcoin's been dancing around, had a little bit of a downward trend most of the day after last night, but now we had a little bounce back here. Bitcoin bounced back in the last hour with the markets, and it bounced back about 2.7%. With the markets rebounded in the afternoon today. NASDAQ jumped 1%. The Dow jumped 370 points, up 1%. S&P is kind of hanging around just below 1% gain on the day. And a lot of interesting stories out there in the markets right now. It's just a really crazy time in the markets. And there's all kinds of speculation on what the Fed is going to do every day. It's kind of like the gambling casino out there, betting on what the Fed's actually going to do and pricing in the more potential for more rate hikes. We're waiting on the CPI print to come out this week. The higher that prints, the more likely it is that the Fed's going to come out with a 0.5 point rate hike, and more rate hikes they're going to indicate and point to in the future. So that will affect markets. Right now, the markets, it's a little early. That's not going to happen until March. So we have the rest of this month to get through. So the markets will probably stabilize, maybe recover a little bit going into that. And then you might see, as we get closer, more of a sell-off getting into the anticipation of that rate hike and what the Fed is actually going to do. So until we get a little bit closer, we're not going to know exactly how to play that. So let's get back to Bitcoin and try to figure out what we can expect and where Bitcoin is going. It's trying to rise to these next levels in terms of where Bitcoin is settling in. And this is a strong area here of resistance that Bitcoin has encountered at the $44,300 level that it's trying to break through and ultimately retest for confirmation of this trend. So how do you know if this trend is going to continue and if Bitcoin is going to continue this retracement? Is that it did break through this area here, which was a strong area of resistance over here in this recent downtrend where Bitcoin tried to break out of that level, it was stopped at the $44,000, $44,300 level. So there's a little bit of resistance there. If Bitcoin can break through that, retest and bounce, that would continue and be confirmation for a continuation of this rebound that we're in right now. Bitcoin has rejected, so we'll just have to see how this plays out. If you go and look at the daily, what we have right now is the potential for a lower high. That's what we're looking for in this retracement, is a lower high. What would be ideal for Bitcoin for continuation would be to come in and put in a higher low and then continue from there, which what we have talked about we could potentially see would be something like this: put in a higher low here and then continue on. And at that point, when we get into that 0.5 to 0.618 retracement level, is where you would see potentially a little bit of a breakdown where you're going to continue up or continue down at that point. And until we get there, we don't know if we're going to see continuation or if we're going to see Bitcoin try to break down. But so far, what we do know is Bitcoin is trying to retest this $44,300 level, find support to continue on. If it does not, it could do this right here, is kind of what we're looking at. And we're just going to have to watch it throughout the evening in the next day or so to see where we're at. The thesis of the double bottom confirmation that we've been looking for could very well have been right here with this. This could have been the double tap bottom confirmation. And if so, then we should see Bitcoin continue to work its way up towards those typical retracement levels before we see it roll over, retest these lows. Once it retests these lows, then we could see continuation. But the question is, once Bitcoin tests these levels, and let's say it gets rejected and falls back down to these lows, what is the likelihood of Bitcoin breaking below that $29,000, $30,000 level? What's the likelihood of it breaking below 35,000? There was a lot of support that stopped Bitcoin from breaking below 35,000 and launched it back into this retracement here. So I'm still in the camp that I'm not sure Bitcoin, unless there's a serious economic event, can break below $30,000. I think that's a macro low that's been put in. It looked like over here that it was going to break down a little bit lower back in June, July. I thought for sure it was going to break down and get closer to that 20,000 level and test the previous all-time high. And I was wrong there. There was a lot of support. And what has changed between 2017, 2018, and now that gives me confidence that a $30,000 level will hold up in normal circumstances, even without the participation of the Fed, but without serious economic issues like a rise in COVID or a global conflict that could affect markets. And again, if those events happen, I think $4,000 is probably a lower level in economic Armageddon. When you have a serious economic event, I think 4,000 we've shown, or Bitcoin has shown, is going to be the limits to the lows that it would go to. But in normal cycles that we're in right now, what's the difference? So before 2017, 2018, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency was primarily retail driven, revolving around the cycles of the 4-year halving, things like that with Bitcoin, where Bitcoin's supply gets reduced by 50% every 4 years. There was a lot of hype going into that in terms of the scarcity, things like that. So it encouraged people to go in and buy now before the supply gets cut in half of the new coins being minted. So it was primarily a retail narrative driven thing. And then it would reach a peak and sell off. Well, now what is the difference and where could we be going in the future? We're going to talk more about cycles and things like that in another video, but just broadly today, I think that this $30,000 level is a level that a lot of institutions, a lot of corporations, a lot of large holders, and the minor break even, I think that's the threshold where at that $30,000 level, there's just so much appetite for Bitcoin at that level that I think that's going to be a macro floor that it just will not break through. And we'll see. It could get tested if this rolls over. Once we hit the retracement rolls over, that level could get tested again. May not be able to get below 35 again, but we'll see. We wicked down to 33. It never did reach those levels, but there's so much institutional interest. And the difference between institutions, so when I say institutions, I'm talking about pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, life insurance companies, big institutional investors. Then you have corporations that are investing and putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet, like we talked about yesterday with KPMG. Those are your corporations that are either investing or using it as a treasury or a hedge in some way. Then you have your investment funds like hedge funds, investment banks that are investing themselves and on behalf of their clients that are of an institutional nature that are involved. And a lot of those entities, their basis is in that $30,000 level. Michael Saylor, MicroStrategy, I think their average price is right at 29,000. And miners just aren't going to sell below that level because they'd be selling at a loss. So their break even right now, I think, is in that $30,000 range of what it costs them to produce Bitcoin right now. The larger, more industrialized miners, that's kind of where their cost, their break even is, and that could change day to day. But as we approach the higher levels, that's where you could see some selling. So the large investors, the miners, and the institutional investors, they're going to want to take profit at some point. And the question's going to be, so we know we've put this potentially this macro low end. So the question's going to be moving forward, where is our ceiling? And the ceiling to break now is 69,000. And once we get back there and test that, we're not going to know. But there's going to be a lot of people taking profit along the way, which goes to the individual. So if you have bought back in here at the peak and you're in a loss right now, the question is, what do you do? When we get back here, are you a seller? Are you going to wait for it to go higher? And I think you need to make that decision based on your own personal needs, your own personal financial position, and your own personal outlook of where you think the market would go. Right now, we know the top is 69 until we get back there and test and see if we can break through. We do not know if Bitcoin is going to breach 69,000. And when that could happen. It could be this year that this high gets tested again, but it's going to take a little while to get there, although this move over here didn't take that long at all. So when we're talking about these things in price action, a lot of these things take time to play out, as we've looked at, but sometimes it happens pretty quickly, like this area right here was about to the peak. That was about 40 days. To the first peak, it was 19 days. To the second peak, it was 40 days from this low point here. So if you think about that, if Bitcoin stayed on this upward trajectory, it could potentially reach the $60,000 level in a couple of weeks, 14 to 19 days, 2 to 3 weeks. And then another 2 to 3 weeks after that is where this peak came in. So there's a lot to get through before Bitcoin can get there, including where it's kind of leveled out right now. And if we look at Bitcoin dominance on a daily, we've seen it pop up just a little bit and kind of in this range right now. And we are seeing the total two, this is the altcoins, including Ethereum, on the rise as well. And then you have the total three kind of looking exactly the same. So everything is kind of rallying with strength together right now. And if you look at the stock markets and kind of see where they're at, markets have been rebounding, had a little bit of down, bounced back up, just kind of like Bitcoin. Bitcoin was decoupled a little bit, but it's generally following the same path here as the markets. With the rebound that we're seeing, markets are still down quite a bit from their all-time highs. So there could be a little bit of bouncing around going on, kind of like over here, where there could be continuation or downside. And until we get clear guidance from the Fed, we're not sure where that's going to be. The altcoins are doing the same thing. They've all broken out of their recent downtrends and are ranging a little bit. And when you look at this in perspective, that's a nice little rebound for Bitcoin right there. Let's just take a look at a couple of the large caps like Solana. Solana is trying to put in some structural support because there's just nothing below that $88 level. It's hovering at 113 right now. It was up around 120, but it keeps getting rejected at that 120 mark. So question is, are these just little relief rallies? And then we'll see more downside for a lot of these altcoins as capital potentially rotates into Bitcoin. And you could see that until Bitcoin makes its move, and then the altcoins could follow right behind it. Somebody was asking about XRP the other day, and XRP made a little bit of a move yesterday. Let's see if I can find XRP. Here we go. There's XRP right there. It's making a little bit of a move here the last couple of days. So XRP is up off its bottom. It was up 56%, down a little bit today. If we take a look at it on the hourly, you can see this nice little bounce that XRP had. It pulled back. A lot of the altcoins look like that. But when you go back and look on the daily, again, the question with XRP and what XRP is facing is obviously the lawsuit. And what's the worst case scenario? So if the SEC prevails, XRP, Ripple Labs will be paying a fine. They'll have regulation moving forward. There'll be a settlement, right? So that's the worst case scenario, and then everything will be fine. It'll be off to the races again. If XRP wins, there'll be a big boost and price will jump and everything will be fine, business as usual. And XRP will probably move to new highs on the news of a potential win and a settlement. And if they lose with the SEC and settle, I think the price will still get a nice little bounce because it'll be a slap on the wrist, pay a fine and move on. And I think they're fighting this to kind of prove a point. But if they lose, it's not going to put them out of business. And the question is, will XRP reach previous all-time highs around $3.50 and beyond? There's a lot of price projections out there for XRP, but until the lawsuit is settled, I don't think we're going to test any of those levels. And there's a lot of resistance and price action for XRP to get through just to get to those levels. So we're just going to have to wait and see how that settles out. I know a lot of people are watching XRP in terms of how this works. But again, remember what I said about projects and opportunities in the space, right? You want to follow where's the capital going and where is the talent going. And there's a lot of big talent that's been joining Ripple Labs, and a lot of capital will be heading in that direction once the lawsuit is behind them. So those are my thoughts on Ripple and where XRP could go and the current lawsuit. So these are the things that I'm looking at right now. Bitcoin is currently trying to break through that $44,300 level. If it can break through and continue on from there, then we're looking for that. Let's go back and revisit that. What we're looking for is the retracement level that we've talked about of 0.5, which would be around that $50,000, $51,000 level. Obviously, these are ranges depending on where everything is. And then that 618 is in the 55,000. This is on our current range high, range low. There are people that look at this reading as well from the previous range high and low for this retracement and putting a 0.5 in that $47,000 range that Bitcoin ultimately needs to get up to and test before we see continuation. So some people are looking at that from the previous high to the previous low versus this cycle that we're in right now. So we'll have to see, but it's a different game. There's a lot more institutional involvement, a lot of more professional traders, and capital is rotating in and out of the space between stocks and cryptos, stabilizing the industry, stabilizing the asset. So a lot of great news out there for the crypto space, crypto industry. And like I said, as far as Bitcoin goes, if you bought back here and you're down right now, it's a very difficult time for trading. It's much harder to trade these downtrends than it is the uptrends. Hopefully you caught some of this bounce, but don't get discouraged. It always comes back. Just like I said the other day, it always comes back. Even when you reach these lows and you feel like there's no hope and it's just going to go to these, low levels, it always bounces back. The question is, how far is it going to bounce back? So right now, what we know is we've got strong support, a lot of buying pressure at 30,000. We know we have strong resistance, a lot of selling pressure in the 60s. So right now, that's our range. So you have to make your own decisions based on your own plans of what you're going to do along the way as the asset retraces and gains value and what your long-term outlook looks like and how you want to play things. And in terms of the decisions you're going to make, whether to hold, buy, sell, trade, swing trade, whatever you're doing. But those are the things to be thinking about. I'll make another video on swing trading and how I do things. I'm not going to talk about specific investments, but I'll talk to you about kind of what I look at in terms of entry, exit, things like that, and the risks that I'm willing to take in terms of, nailing some of this price action, because I like to buy here, sell here, buy here, sell here. And you've heard the old, adage of dollar cost averaging, buy the dips. Buy the dip is more for the uptrend, right? So you buy on these pullbacks and hold, buy on these pullbacks. When you're on a downtrend, buying the dip is not necessarily a long-term strategy. It's more of a swing trade unless you have the full confidence that the asset's going to end up at some point much higher. But the problem is if you're buying here, buying here, buying here, depending on how low the asset goes, you just don't know where you're going to land on your basis. For some people, that's a good strategy, and some people don't care. But for me, I like to see things settle out before I ultimately, from a hold standpoint, longer term standpoint, before I'm going to make a long-term play. But I have no problem buying here, selling here, buying here, selling here. And that's kind of how I work my trades. Same thing along the way. You can buy these, buy the dips here, sell the peak of the rip here. You can do the same thing on the uptrend, or you just buy and hold on the way up and then sell when it reverses, buy back down here, and you can do the whole macro thing. But we'll go into that later in terms of another video, what I look at, the levels and things like that, as far as swing trading goes, and where I would enter and exit and why. So those are the things that I'm looking at. I hope you have a fantastic day. I hope this video helped you, and I will see you on the next video.